1990s saw the privatisation of Britain's railways. The uniform BR livery applied to the HST fleet would soon change, and in its place came a host of new liveries adopted by the private companies. The new millennium saw new operators come onto the scene, while the fleet was adapted and developed to suit the new companies. The mid-1990s brought about the selling off of British Railways, and the HST fleet was split into two newly formed companies formed by the government, Porterbrook and Angel Trains. These in turn leased the HSTs into various train operating companies, of which 4 were formed following privatisation. Initially, these would take over the HST fleet in its BR colours and operate them on the same routes. However, that would soon change, with a host of new liveries, new routes and timetables. Virgin Rail Group were awarded the Intercity Cross-Country franchise in November 1996. The company took over services on the 5th of January 1997 under the Virgin Cross-Country brand. Virgin's cross-country network was largely based at Birmingham New Street, through which services ran from the northeast of England to the West Country and the northwest of England to the south coast. Here, a service from the south coast enters Manchester Piccadilly. Virgin adopted an eye-catching red and black livery, which was applied to the HSTs inherited from British Railways. In this period of transition, sets ran with a mix of BR executive colours and the new Virgin colours. Virgin's corporate identity was important to the company, and the repainting of HSTs was carried out relatively quickly. Scenes like this are quite rare. Tucked at the back of this executive liveried set is a power car in Virgin's new colours. It was taken in April 1997, just a few weeks after the takeover. Initially, Virgin was only awarded the cross-country franchise. However, the company were also awarded the West Coast franchise from March 1997, and it was decided to use just the Virgin logo on their fleet. The XC, standing for cross-country, was removed from their respective vehicles. Once again, a few weeks into privatisation, an HST retains just one vehicle in Virgin colours. When Virgin were awarded the Intercity West Coast franchise from March 1997, the company inherited a fleet of loco-hauled electric trains plus HSTs employed on services to Holyhead. An HST departs Euston on a Holyhead service. The Holyhead-bound HST crosses the Isle of Anglesey, a few miles from its destination. HST operation on the Holyhead services was relatively short-lived, ending on the 21st of May 2004. Virgin HSTs operated cross-country services from the northwest to the south coast at Bournemouth and Brighton. Beyond Basingstoke, these operated over Third Rail territory. The other cross-country flow was from the northeast to the southwest, with Bristol a major hub. A unit with buffers is seen at Bristol Parkway. In 1987 and 1988, 8 HST power cars were fitted with buffers. This would enable them to work in conjunction with Class 91s on the newly electrified East Coast Main Line, in effect becoming driving van trailers. This was the consequence of a shortage of Mark IV carriages for the 91s to haul. 6 of the buffered locos are now operated by Grand Central and 2 by Network Rail. Now the southwest and the main line through Dawlish. 43088 was one of the second batch of HSTs allocated to the eastern region. It entered traffic in May 1978 as part of set 254016. 43087 calls at Paignton in preparation for taking a train to Paddington. This power car was one of the first destined for the East Coast Main Line and was originally numbered 254016 when it entered traffic in May 1978. Of course, there were two such units with this number at that time. Hst'S worked alongside Virgin Class 47s, which also operated cross-country services to the southwest. This Class 47 comes to the rescue of a failed HST at Newton Abbot. Note the mix of executive and Virgin liveried coaches in this scene from 2001, some years after Virgin took over the franchise. As far as liveries were concerned, loco-hauled coaching stock and locomotives were given a lower priority than HST sets. A Paddington to Penzance train calls at Totnes and prepares to climb the Bank of Rattery. Two operators ran HST services to the West Country. The days of the HSTs on Virgin services would be numbered, as the company had, as part of the franchise deal, committed to replace all the existing stock. This included, as well as the HST fleet, Class 47s and Class 86s employed on cross-country services. In September 2004, the HSTs were withdrawn and replaced by Voyagers. National Express Group took over the Midland Main Line franchise on the 28th of April 1996. This franchise was to have run until 2005, but was later extended until late 2007. St Pancras is seen on the 13th of February 2002. The Midland Railway terminus had changed little since the days of steam. However, that would soon change with the coming of Eurostar services. Midland Main Line adopted a livery comprising mid-turquoise for the upper body and grey on the lower panel. It incorporated 3 orange bands along the body sides. The Midland Hst'S were based and maintained at Leeds Neville Hill. "43048, one of the 253 sets built originally destined for the Western region, enters the terminus with a train from Nottingham. "43053 was, as set 253026, one of the first allocations to the Western region. It was briefly named County of Humberside from 1984 to 1990, while based at Old Oak Common. Tangerine and grey livery lasted until spring 2003, when a very different blue livery was adopted on the power cars. This included a series of grey and white logos and an orange band along the sole bar. These scenes show the period of transition. The coaches were finished in a light grey upper body with blue and grey stripes along with blue and orange stripes along the bottom. The new colour scheme is shown to good effect as a power car departs St Pancras. 43060 dates from August 1977, when it was numbered 254003. It was named County of Leicestershire from 1985 to 1990. Just 5 years separates this scene from the earlier views of St Pancras. When Virgin replaced its Hst fleet, most were put into storage. However, they were soon taken over by Midland Main Line. 3 carried the red Virgin colours, although the Virgin branding was removed. This meant that in 2003, Hst's on the Midland Main Line carried a mix of 3 liveries: Virgin Red and the old and new Midland colours of turquoise and grey and blue and grey. St Pancras to Nottingham-bound trains climb Sharn Brook. This scene shows a rake in all 3 liveries. Extensive engineering work on the West Coast Main Line resulted in replacement trains on the Midland Main Line from St Pancras to Manchester. Known as Project Rio, these trains had an R above the number and ran from May 2003 until September 2004. In November 2007, the East Midlands franchise was awarded to Stagecoach. Accordingly, services operated by Midland Main Line became East Midlands Trains. They adopted a new corporate livery with blue power cars and white coaching stock. This livery was based on the company's South West Trains franchise with blue and white colours. Once again, in this period of transition, a mix of colours were in evidence. The fleet was allocated to Neville Hill Depot at Leeds, with units stabled and prepared for service at Cricklewood and Derby Etches Park. Now HSTs operate mainly the fast trains between St Pancras and Nottingham. In addition, they work additional rush-hour trains to Leeds, which also moves them into place for maintenance work at Neville Hill. Before continuing with our look at the new railway companies, we'll make a brief diversion. The first HST power cars were named in April 1983. However, those names were subsequently removed. In the subsequent years, names were regularly applied to other power cars, although once again many of the names didn't last long, averaging around 5 years each. Today, a total of 52 power cars carry names. 43041 received the name Meningitis Trust Support for Life in 2011. It had previously carried the name City of Discovery from 1990. 43053 is named University of Worcester. From 1984 to 1990, it carried the name County of Humberside. 43033 received this name, driver Brian Cooper, who was sadly killed in the Paddington rail crash. 43185 was repainted into Intercity Swallow livery and named Great Western as part of the 21st anniversary celebrations of Intercity. Many of the other power cars in Virgin service carry names. This is 43308 Highland Chieftain. 43290 carries the name MTU Fascination of Power, after the re-engining of the unit. .36367 carries the name Deltic 50 1955 to 2005, which it received in February 2007. 43002, which was repainted into British Railways corporate colours in May 2016 and given the name of its designer, Sir Kenneth Grange. 43238 was named National Railway Museum 40 years 1975 to 2015 at the National Railway Museum on the 23rd of September 2015. It carried an NRM name from 1975, but this was adapted to the 40th anniversary theme, while it was painted into a distinctive new livery depicting exhibits from the museum's collection. It passes a short distance from its namesake. Powercalf carries the name Craig-and-Tinney, marking 100 years of the Scottish depot. It was also given distinctive vinyls. It was previously named Blackpool Rock. Here it departs York for Aberdeen. Two of Great Central's fleet have been named, 43484 after a railway publisher. The other, 43423, carries the name Valenta 1972 to 2010. And now, back to the dawn of the privatised railway. Privatisation on the East Coast Main Line led to the East Coast Hst'S being taken over and operated by Great North Eastern Railway, which won the franchise in 1996. They worked alongside electric services on King's Cross to Newcastle and Edinburgh services, as well as on non-electrified sections to Aberdeen, Harrogate and Inverness. HST prepares to depart King's Cross bound for Aberdeen. The dark blue livery with red stripe was the simplest to be applied to the HST fleet. More scenes on East Coast metals. By this time, the East Coast services were running with 9 trailer cars. In 2007, National Express East Coast took over the franchise, and with it would come a change of livery. However, during the transition, the blue livery continued, with the GNER letters removed and National Express added in a white or red stripe. These scenes were taken at York on the 2nd of January 2008. Note the number 43320. Early 2007 had seen the refurbishment of 13 of GNER's Hst'S, with 200 added to their original numbers. Eventually, the franchise dedicated livery was introduced. Here, the trailers had been treated before the power cars. The National Express franchise had been awarded to National Express in August 2007 and had commenced operations in December. However, it was widely considered they had paid too much for the franchise, and within 2 years the company came under increasing financial pressure. By 2009, it was necessary for the Department of Transport to take over and in effect nationalise the franchise. From the 13th of November, East Coast, a government subsidiary, had taken over operations. The livery was again changed. The National Express wording was replaced by East Coast. East Coast operations ran to Aberdeen, involving a run along a line which retains semaphore signalling. In March 2015, a joint venture between Stagecoach and Virgin Trains took over the East Coast franchise. As a stopgap, the power cars had a red flash with the Virgin lettering. In this scene, a few weeks into the change, the trailer cars still carry the East Coast livery. The rear power car is unchanged. By 2016, all of the fleet carried new Virgin colours. Midland Main Line, British Railways operation of the Hst'S was handed over to Great Western Trains in February 1996. They adopted a green and ivory livery with a gold stripe. Here, one of the first Hst'S to carry this livery calls at St Earth en route for Paddington. Another view at Newport, with the power cars in the green and ivory colours. Then, in December 1998, they became First Great Western, after First Group bought out its partners' shares in Great Western Holdings. The HST fleet was rebranded as First Great Western, and logos were added to the gold stripe, along with a stylized logo. HSTs are seen at Paddington in the first year of the new franchise. These scenes were taken at Westbury in 2000. An HST for Paddington passes one of the last Class 58s in service. The new livery has shown to good effect on this westbound HST. Another train for the west crosses the junctions to the east of the station. The barks and hands offered the HSTs the opportunity to run at speed. Now a Paddington train departs Newport. Note the power car at the rear. Now a Paddington-bound HST departs Bristol Parkway. At Dawlish, an HST stops en route for Plymouth. The number of the power car, in this case 43182, was rather indistinct against the gold stripe. now the classic viewpoint from Langstone Rock. And the climb of Rattery Bank. Now the run along the coast into Paignton. In 2001, it was all changed for the liveries carried by the Hst'S on the Western. First Group had expanded its operations, and it was decided that the green livery did not fit in with the new corporate image. In this transition scene, the old green colours are seen alongside the new blue livery which was to be adopted. The blue swish or Barbie livery is seen on the power car at the rear of this train. It comprises a gold bar with a red strip and white area. Soon, the white area was dropped in favour of blue. The new branding and blue colour scheme is seen on these Hst'S at Paddington. By this time, the all-over blue on the power cars predominated. The operation sphere of the fleet had remained much as that in the last days of BR. This is a departure for Bristol on the 29th of November 2005. The change from green to blue colours was undertaken over a protracted period. More views of the new livery on the Western Main Line. In April 2006, first Great Western Trains and Wessex Trains had combined into the Great Western franchise and became the first Great Western brand. A new blue livery was subsequently adopted as the stock was refurbished, and this was known as the Dynamic Lines livery. In this transitional period, both liveries are seen. Dynamic Lines livery included a series of wavy lines on the coaches. Initially, the dynamic lines were extended over the power cars. Later, the lines were dropped and an all-over blue applied with the words First Great Western each side. First Great Western had the largest of the HST fleets. The fleet was refurbished by Bombardier in Derby and Ilford between 2006 and 2008, and this included the coach interiors, which were redesigned with airline-style seats, giving more seats per coach. In addition, from 2005, the fleet was re-engined with MTU units. Here, a train for Hereford departs Evesham. While a service from Hereford to Paddington approaches and passes the soon-to-be-replaced semaphores and box. A Swansea to Paddington train heads away from Newport. The line side on the approach to Seven Tunnel Junction has been cleared in readiness for electrification. The footbridge at Pilning has now been closed, pending electrification work. This is Bristol Temple Meads. Power car 43004 has been named First for the Future. It started service in March 1976 and was the second HST set to enter traffic, initially numbered 253002. This wasn't its first name. In 1990, it was named Swan Hunter. Paddington-bound train heads away from Bristol. This is the classic viewpoint on the eastern approach to Bath. In Cornwall, the Hst'S work under the semaphores. Paddington has been the best place to observe the Hst fleet in action, with more arrivals and departures than any other station. In November 2012, Power Car 43160 was named Sir Moir Lockhead, after a founding member of First Group. A number of Great Western's power cars carry special liveries. 43186 has one celebrating the Diamond Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth. Two power cars in the Great Western Fleet, 43192 and 43143, carry Bristol 2015 livery, marking Bristol's role as the European green capital. In September 2015, First were rebranded as Great Western Railway, and a new dark green livery was adopted. The highest profile repaint was applied to Power Car 43002. It was turned out into original Intercity 125 livery and named Sir Kenneth Grange in 2016 to mark the 40th anniversary of the fleet. From new, the HSTs were equipped with the same power units as those on the prototype, namely the Paxman Valenta 12 RP200L engine, with a power output of 2,250 horsepower. When introduced in 1976 on the Western region, they gained the distinction of being the fastest diesel-operated passenger service in the world. Their first duties were from Paddington to Bristol and Swansea. These scenes were taken at Swansea late in 1976. Their distinctive colours and design made them an immediate hit with the travelling public. The HSTs were always regarded as a short-term measure or stopgap before the introduction of the advanced passenger train. Once beyond their intended lifespan, it became apparent that a more reliable and efficient engine would be needed to replace the original Paxman Valenta unit. At first, it was thought that a 3,000 horsepower version of this unit could be developed, giving spectacular and very high performance. However, a rather piecemeal program was started. In September 1994, and the last days of British Railways, the first power car, 43170, was fitted with a successor to the Paxman Valenta engine, in the form of the 2,100 horsepower Paxman 12 VP185. This gave a 10 to 15% saving in fuel consumption and reduction in emissions, plus an increase in power output. Gradually, more power cars were fitted with the new power unit. In the 1990s and the era of privatisation, the programme was continued to replace the power units. However, the companies involved did not adopt a uniform approach, with Midland Main Line being the odd one out. Midland Main Line decided on the Paxman engine 12 VP185 as favoured by British Railways and continued their re-engine programme. By 2003, the entire Midland fleet had been fitted with the Paxman engine. First Great Western favoured a German 2,250 horsepower MTU power unit, which had been fitted to an Angel Trains-operated HST in 2004. During 2005, First Great Western fitted the new MTU power unit to two of its power cars. The company was sufficiently impressed by the MTU engine to re-equip its entire HST fleet by 2009. They had improvements over the existing Paxman Valenta engines, reduced noise, less smoke and exhaust emissions, improved reliability and lower fuel consumption. The fitting of MTU power units was followed by GNER, who operated the East Coast route, and the programme was continued by its successor, National Express East Coast. The fleet were renumbered by adding 200 to the existing power car number, making them in the 43200 and 43300 number series. Grand Central have also fitted MTU engines. By December 2010, all had been re-equipped and renumbered into the 43-400 series. Cross Country's fleet were fitted with MTU units by Brush at Loughborough and renumbered into the 43-300 series. Grand Central was to take on 6 power cars to operate a new East Coast service from King's Cross to Sunderland. Although the units were obtained in 2006, services didn't start until December 2007. 2 of the units, 43084 and 43123, were the last HST power cars to operate with the original Paxman Valenta engines. In 2010, these were fitted with MTU units. Grand Central applied their striking black livery with an orange stripe, along with painted front ends to disguise the buffers. The power cars were also renumbered in the 400 series. The addition of the buffers has an interesting history. In 1987, British Rail converted a number of the HST power cars in East Coast service by removing their lower valancing and fitting buffers. This was done to allow them to be operated effectively as driving van trailers by the new Class 91 electrics, thus alleviating a shortage of new coaching stock. Electrification resulted in the buffered power cars being transferred to Virgin services. Made redundant again, they were transferred to Midland Main Line services before eventually being taken over by Grand Central. The HSTs run under the semaphores on the route north from Stockton. This is, along with the Western Main Line through Cornwall, one of the few places where mechanical signalling still controls the HSTs. Now, back to the East Coast Main Line at York. This is Colton Junction, where the new Selby diversion route diverges to the south. The British Railways Mark III coach was designed to upgrade its intercity services and make them more competitive with air and road competition. The first coaches were built for the prototype HST, which began trials in 1972. The prototype is seen in action at Shildon 150, held in 1975 to mark the 150th anniversary of the Stockton and Darlington Railway. Production Mark III coaches entered service from 1975 to 1988, with the majority destined for the HST fleet. HSTs are seen at King's Cross in 1978, when they ran with 2 power cars and 8 Mark III coaches. The main difference for the Mark III coaches used in HST formations compared with those in loco-hauled formations was in the electrical supply arrangements and the lack of buffers. The HST coaches have an auxiliary generator, which takes power supply from the power car and converts it for use in the air conditioning and other services. The sets delivered for the Eastern region comprised 8 trailer cars made up as follows. 2 were trailer first, conveying first-class accommodation. 4 were trailer second with second-class accommodation. There were 2 coaches with buffet facilities, one with basic buffet facilities, the other with a restaurant for first-class passengers. The buffet cars were converted into second-class coaches to provide extra seating by the mid-1980s. This is one of the 2 trailer cars with first-class accommodation. The seating in HST trailer cars has changed considerably over the years. First-grade Western had been refurbished and converted into a high-density layout with airline-style seats and with just 2 tables per coach. Those in Virgin service on the East Coast Main Line now run with 9 trailer cars. The bogies, classified BT10, were designed specifically for the Mark III coach and offered a considerable improvement over the Mark II predecessors. The special air suspension gave a very smooth ride. Whereas the Mark IIs were limited to 100 miles per hour, these had a maximum of 125. The body shell of the Mark III was 75 feet, 10 feet longer than the Mark II. They have attained a reputation for exceptional strength, with considerable crashworthiness. Virgin took the course of withdrawing its HSTs and replacing them with Voyager units in the early noughties. However, an increase in traffic led to overcrowding, and Virgin's successor, Arriva Cross Country, decided to bring back a handful of HSTs. Initially, they used HSTs hired from East Coast and Midland Main Line services, but eventually introduced their own fleet from HSTs which had been stored out of use. This is a Newcastle to Plymouth service calling at Tamworth in its distinctive silver cross-country livery. They also fitted MTU engines to their fleet in 2008 and 2009, making them 43 3s. This is a Plymouth to Edinburgh service heading along the coast at Dawlish. The number of HSTs employed by cross-country varies on a day-to-day basis. In the depths of winter, just one set can be in use each weekday. On a misty winter's day, a Newcastle to Plymouth train heads away from Ashchurch. Cotswold Rail took advantage of the availability of a number of mostly ex-Virgin HST sets and leased them to provide special services. This short-term arrangement produced two distinctive repaints. One was painted into Hornby model railway colours. The other sported Cotswold's silver livery. Trials were conducted with an HST power car number 43089 when Hitachi modified the unit to work with hybrid traction. It's seen undergoing tests on the Great Central Railway, finished in Network Rail yellow livery. In the early noughties, a surplus of power cars and coaches developed. As a result, Network Rail were able to lease a number of vehicles to form a train capable of detecting track faults and problems while running at high speed. The result was the new measurement train. 3 power cars were employed, one of which could act as a spare. The train was based at Edinburgh, Craigentinny and began operating a programme of trips over the East Coast and West Coast main lines plus the Western region. Here it's returning from Bristol to Derby. The coaches comprise a series of laboratory cars and were modified for the purpose by Hunsley Barclay at Kilmarnock. This is part of its regular runs along the Midland Main Line. It's returning to Derby via Nottingham. The 3 power cars have now been refurbished and fitted with the MTU engines. They also include a pantograph, which is non-powered and used for monitoring overhead catenary. By the start of 2017, the HST fleet in passenger service was dominated by Great Western Railway with 58 sets. They work from Paddington to the West Country and South Wales, as well as the Cotswold route to Worcester and Hereford. Most carry the first Great Western livery, although some are being repainted into new Great Western Railway green livery. Virgin East Coast operate 14 sets on services along the East Coast Main Line from King's Cross to Harrogate, Lincoln, Edinburgh, Aberdeen and Inverness. Midland Main Line operate 10 sets on services from St Pancras to Nottingham, with some trains extending as far as Leeds. And Cross Country has 5 sets on services from the North East to the West Country. Finally, Great Central and the smallest fleet of just 3 sets on King's Cross to Sunderland services via the East Coast Main Line. In 2016, the HST fleet celebrated its 40th anniversary. However, the following year was to be the last for the dominance of these icons from the era of British Railways. Soon, a new generation of motive power would take to the rails. However, the HST fleet will see action for many more years to come. Some will be withdrawn and others will be adapted for new traffic flows. Who knows, their half-century may well be the next major anniversary for these much-loved trains.